Hello, welcome to the Fostering Conversion webinar. My name is Matt Kelly. I'm a client partner at NetNatives, focusing on all the fostering and adoption work that we do. If someone could just let me know that you can hear me, otherwise it's going to be more of a one-sided conversation that is already. You can see the text box there. Okay. So during this webinar, I'm going to cover how to assess the current communication strategy that you have implemented, how to create a new strategy, and our recommendations on how to implement that strategy. So first of all, we're starting off with the discovery phase. So this is the phase where you take stock of what you're currently doing to convert the foster care inquiries that you have at the moment. So initially, you need to identify all the touch points that you have once someone has made an inquiry into becoming a foster carer. So this allows you to perform analysis on each channel that you're using at each stage of the fostering process. So once you've identified all your communication that you have with potential foster carers, we recommend grouping these into categories, which allow for a more abstract level of comparison. And the real benefit of that is that you can see which of the channels that you are using, whether that is blogs or emails, actually are performing well for you in the future and once you implement your new strategy. So once all your categories are in place and you've identified every channel that you are using, this really makes it easier to find the holes that you have in your strategy. And this may make it more apparent that the communication at a certain stage of the process could be improved to increase the rate of progression that your people have coming through. So once all that's carried out, you identify the top performing communication channel for each stage of the fostering process. So this would be which stage is working best for you for moving people on from inquiry to making an application and then application onto approval. So it may also become apparent that you do not need to really be having any phone discussions with someone until they're a bit further down the process, which can really free up some time with the staff that you have. So once the discovery phase is over, we move on to gaining insights into why the communication breaks down and potential foster carers will eventually leave the process. So initially what we recommend doing is conducting focus groups with current and previous foster carers. This really allows you to get a real representation of the channels of communication that they prefer to use at each stage of the process. It also allows you to gain an understanding of why they might not have gone through the process, although you do get quite a slight insight into that at this stage by conducting focus groups. So the easiest way of gaining insight into why people don't go through the fostering process with you is to send out a survey to those who have dropped out. So at this stage, you already have their email addresses, hopefully, so this can be quite a cost-effective method. And we have found that surveying this audience is itself a way of directly increasing conversion, but that's something that I'll cover later on in the webinar. So another thing that will give you insight into potential threats that may occur during the conversion strategy. So what are the real issues that are making people drop out of the process and not go through and become a foster carer? So the focus groups and surveys will give you a solid basis in which you can implement controls and structures that will allow you to mitigate any effect of previous threats that were occurring during your last strategy. For example, if people found that they were encouraged to make a formal application before they felt they'd had all the information that they wanted, this is something that we would need to be addressed in the new strategy to stop people dropping out and thinking that they were being pressured into doing it. So the next stage of the process is the analysis. So this is once all the insight projects have been carried out, you need to gather the information that you've collected. And once it's all gathered and collated together, you process it into a clear, easy to understand report. So highlighting the best channels for communications, what each member of the team should be doing at each stage of the process. And then further on from that, you will present the report. And this will need to be shared amongst all the stakeholders of the conversion strategy. So really, essentially those working on the front line. The insights you gain also allow you to create custom audience personas. So initially, it took me quite a while to get my head around why these would be beneficial, but they are very essential to creating a robust conversion strategy. So, for example, a good example here is creating a persona detailing someone who's unsure about the certain aspects of fostering, and maybe they only want to foster a young child. So, having this persona and identifying how your strategy should be able to incorporate their needs, the fears that they may have, and make them go further on down through the funnel will really help you increase your conversion. And it will help you really to develop a strategy that ensures you're addressing all the different concerns and fears that potential foster carers have. So now I'm going to go through 6 key steps that you need in order to be able to develop your conversion strategy. And this is through a lot of experience that this is developed through a lot of experience that we have from actually developing these strategies with our clients. So the first one that you want to do is identify the gaps in your conversion strategy. So you'll be able to build a solid business case where this needs and why you need to change. So it's pretty apparent that near enough everyone needs more foster carers and generally have less marketing resources available to encourage people to come forward to foster. So by increasing your conversion rate, you can spend less on marketing and achieve a much greater number of foster carers. So really thinking about what you're actually looking to achieve. Is there a specific type of child that you need to generate more foster carers for, such as older children or those with additional needs, and then setting objectives following that. So moving on from there, we have to so it's really essential to define the tactics that you're going to use going forward to ensure that you have a consistent level of service provided throughout each stage of the process. So being able to know that you need to engage with a potential foster carer in a certain way at each stage of the process is key to implementing a really cost-effective strategy. So once people have made their initial inquiry, it might not always be the best decision to initially call them. Maybe you can send them a few emails informing them about information events. Things like that will help you to really reduce the costs. Then once you've identified a comprehensive list of the use cases, so why people will be coming to you, what their fears might be, what they're looking to achieve by being a foster carer, you can use this to create workflows which will greatly benefit the longevity of the strategy. So as long as you have a comprehensive list, you'll be able to have a strategy that can last for a number of years. So for example, what workflow would you put someone in if they don't currently have a spare room or they don't want to foster an older child? All options really need to be considered at this stage to make sure that you aren't constantly updating the strategy throughout the year. And so the real benefit of not having to constantly update it is that you can measure the effectiveness of the strategy. So we must really create a list of key performance indicators that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and within a certain time frame. So for example, you may decide on an objective to increase your conversion rate by 3% within a 6-month period, rather than simply to get more foster carers. So the former would be a smart objective and the latter is not. And the last stage of developing the strategy is to decide on who within the organisation is going to be responsible for which part of the strategy, whether they be actually implementing the workflows, conducting the communication with potential foster carers, or the person responsible for assessing the performance of the strategy. So moving on to actually how we implement a conversion strategy, the first step is to use automated lead nurturing. So by creating a map of workflows, you're able to really increase the likelihood of you covering all bases in terms of fears and queries that people may have. For example, if you receive an inquiry for someone who didn't currently have a spare room, but it does seem as though they will foster one day, how do you keep this person engaged with your brand while a room becomes available? So setting up workflows allows you to free up time and staff resources. So by entering them into the workflow, that will email them monthly with updates on the service, maybe if you have a newsletter, and then a separate email that will go out to them once every 6 months to check if they do have a spare room available. Another extremely effective way of increasing your conversion is to conduct remarketing. So remarketing works by identifying those who have made an inquiry in the past, but for whatever reason, obviously except for being excluded from the process, they have not moved on to the next stage. So maybe it wasn't the right time for them. They were just inquiring for future reference. How do we get them to come back to us? So after some time has passed and the potential foster carer is no longer engaging with the brand at all, we'll create an advertising campaign targeting people with re-engaging adverts, maybe along the lines, have you ever considered fostering in the past? And then maybe now's the right time for you to come forward. And this will encourage them to come forward and make another inquiry with you. So we find that this method is extremely effective at increasing the conversion rate, as though people who make their second inquiry show a really great interest in becoming a foster carer and generally move through the process a lot quicker, as it tends to be the right time in their life. So also another thing that we can implement is a better level of customer service. So it is a key issue that we come across when identifying why people have left the process, and it's not always very easy to talk to other staff members about, but it always does need to be addressed. So the first thing to consider is that not all those who make an inquiry want to be contacted using the same channel. Some prefer over the phone, some prefer to come in and have a chat in person or maybe at an event, and some prefer email. And so allowing foster carers to choose how they want to be contacted really dramatically increases the likelihood of them going through the process, because they will be answering their emails if that's their preferred channel, and they will be answering the phone if that's what they want to do. And then moving on, we see, so what responsibility should the internal stakeholders have? So in terms of customer service, you really need to play to the staff member's strength. If they find it a lot easier to engage with people over email, then let them deal with the inquiries that do come through with the person's preference being email. And always ensure that there is an escalation policy in place for any concerns that a potential foster carer may have. So making sure that all of the small issues are dealt with correctly and quickly will dramatically reduce the drop-off in the process, as it won't escalate into a larger issue that will stop someone wanting to foster with you. So really the best way to identify what's causing people to abandon the process is consulting with people on the front line regularly. They'll have the best idea in the organisation of why people are not happy with continuing the process, although generally it does seem to be quite hard to ask them why did this person not go through. They won't want to put themselves in trouble, but it's something that we need to get across. We're then looking at how we can create a personalised approach to each inquiry that we get. So encapsulating all the above points, try and identify early on what issues people may have. So if you find out in the first communications that you have to them that they might not have the room available when it actually comes to making a placement, maybe don't follow up with them for now, put them into a keep warm channel where they'll receive email notifications and maybe get back in touch in 6 months. And this will help really mitigate the effects of any issues that they do have. And so now you want to implement a structure to be able to respond to those who leave the service. So whether it just be a follow-up call or to find out why, or preferably a questionnaire, it's essential to engage with those who've left the process and identify anything that you could have done differently. So this will stop people in the future from falling into the same trap. Now we're looking at implementing a re-engagement questionnaire. So we found these to be really useful at reducing the rate of people who drop off in the future and increasing the rate of people that actually re-engage with the service. So this can be automated and sent out after a specific time period after the person has dropped out, and essentially it's at no cost as it's all done through email. And the real benefit of this is you can find out why people didn't want to foster with you and maybe went to another service. What were the reasons behind that, why they chose the service they did go to, and then you can also ask them if they'd like you to get back in touch with them. So we're coming to the end of the webinar now, so what I'm going to do is highlight the benefits that you can gain by implementing a new conversion strategy. So quite obviously, and the main point of this exercise, is to increase the amount of foster carers that you end up with for your marketing spend. So by freeing up the time of the team when it comes to communicating with the audience, it really allows the team to have more time to focus on providing high quality customer service to those who are already progressing through the process quite quickly, not just chasing those people who aren't as engaged. So giving care to the people that are attending information evenings, that have made their formal application, and they are very likely to go through the process, ensuring that we reduce drop-off of those people, and the automated process can re-engage the people who have already dropped off from the service. And so the opportunity to re-engage with the current data and produce new foster carers that you have. So those who would have been previously completely written off as maybe uncontactable, or they just keep saying it's not the right time for them, we can enter them into a workflow that requires little time, no effort, and very low cost, and encourage them to come forward and complete the process. It might not be the right time for them now, but it could be in a year or two. And this way we'll be able to increase the number of foster carers that we are generating for our marketing spend. Really, the benefit of using automated workflows and surveys is the ability to be able to track and provide a really clear conversion funnel. So being able to assess the effectiveness, essentially, of the strategy and being able to refine it for the future. So identifying where you're currently performing well, how much drop-off you have at each stage of the fostering process. This will really highlight areas that you need to put more focus on. So if you're noticing that you have 100 inquiries that drop down to maybe 80 people maybe making a formal application, but then only 30 going through to assessment, there's something going wrong between those two last stages that we need to address and maybe put more time into a workflow development to get them engaged more with the brand. So all of this combines you to make better informed decisions about the future of your marketing. For example, if you identify that the majority of people who drop off are unhappy with the lack of communication, this could be something that you brag about in any future marketing that you do. So obviously, once your new strategy is in place and it is performing well, it needs to become a talking point of your marketing going forward. And obviously, this will be something that is really resonating with the target demographic, and you'll know who's the right people to be in contact with from your conversion strategy. So just like to say thank you for watching. I hope you found it informative, and if there's anything you'd like to discuss further, if you could please get in touch. Uh, and if there's any questions, I can answer a few of those now if they come in. So we have a question here saying, what tools can you use to implement the workflow? So we have a piece of software called enquiry, which is free for charities and local authorities to use, where you can implement these sort of advanced automation workflows depending on certain attributes that people fill out in any of their inquiry forms. So an example of there would be if someone had said in the inquiry form that they don't currently have a spare room, but they do expect to have one in the next 6 months, we could enter them into a workflow like that. And so Kiros, there's weekly workshops that are hosted by one of my colleagues called Alex, and they'll be able to inform you about any changes made to the platform, any sort of Q&A session as well, any questions that you do have. And we also provide design services and implementation of the workflow services as well. And if there's any other questions, I can answer those. Okay, well, doesn't look like there's any more coming in there. So I'd like to say, again, thank you very much for watching. And if anyone would like to discuss this with me further, please just drop me an email or give a call into the office, and I'll be glad to help. Thank you.